This mini lecture will cover Chapter 6, Organizational Strategy. Here are the learning outcomes for this chapter. You may pause here to review them. We first start by looking at the concepts of resources and competitive advantage. Resources are assets, capability, processes, employees, information, and knowledge that companies have and use to improve efficiency and effectiveness and to create a sustainable competitive advantage. A competitive advantage is when a company provides greater value for a customer than their competitors can, or I like to simply say it's when a company or an organization is able to do something better than its competitors. And a sustainable competitive advantage occurs when other companies have tried to duplicate what a company is doing but have been unsuccessful and are no longer trying to copy it. In order for a competitive advantage to be sustainable, it has to have one or more of these resources. So it has to be valuable. It has to be a valuable resource that allows companies to improve their efficiency and effectiveness. It has to be a rare resource, something that other firms or organizations don't possess. It has to be imperfectly imitable, meaning it's impossible or really costly or difficult for others to duplicate. And it has to be a non-substitutable resource, meaning that you create value or a competitive advantage and there are no other substitutes or replacements for what you're doing. So it's really hard to create a sustainable competitive advantage. Here's some companies that have created competitive advantages. Nike has a great brand, you know that. Large market share, McDonald's through their speed and efficiency and their cost. Walmart through their supply chain, and which allows them to have low cost products. And Louis Vuitton has created a luxury brand that is preferred by consumers over other luxury brands. So there's 3 steps in the strategy making process. First, you need to assess the need for a strategic change, then conduct a situational analysis and choose different alternatives. In the first step, you're assessing the need for strategic change. And really, you're just trying to see where there's a discrepancy between a company's intended strategy and the strategic actions managers have taken. And really just saying, like, something needs to change and addressing those changes. In the second step is a situational analysis. This stands for a lot of times we use something called a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we'll talk about this more in a second. The book also talks about things like core capabilities, strategic groups, core firms, and secondary firms, which you can read about. What I really want you to understand is the SWOT. And so a SWOT looks at the internal strengths and weaknesses of a company. So strengths, what does a company do well? What do you have that competitors don't? What are your internal resources? What are your assets? Weaknesses are things your company lacks, things your competitors do better than you, resource limitations, unclear selling propositions. And then opportunities and threats are in the external environment. So these are things that are happening outside of the company that maybe the company has little control of. So we want to try to exploit our opportunities. So we're looking for underserved markets where there's few competitors, emerging needs, etc. So things that we can take advantage of that are happening outside of the company. And we want to neutralize our threats. And so threats are other competition, changes in the regulations and laws, negative press, changing customer attitudes. And these are just some examples. So strengths and weaknesses are internal, and opportunities and threats are external. So these are things we're good at and not good at, and these are things that we want to take advantage of or neutralize in the external environment. Here's a sample SWOT analysis for Buffalo Wild Wings, and you can pause here to read through it, and it'll give you some better ideas of what is included in a SWOT analysis and what might be included in each quadrant. In the third step, we're choosing strategic alternatives. So managers need to choose a risk avoiding strategy or a risk seeking strategy. And we want to determine where we want to fall within that risk, that level of risk. So we first look at corporate level strategies, and this is the overall organizational strategies, which addresses what business or businesses are we in or should we be in. And so one of the things we're looking at here is how do we minimize risk by diversifying? So having different things within our business portfolio. So you can develop new businesses, acquire new businesses, reduce risk by unrelated diversification. So creating products and services or offering products and services that are different than the ones we already offer. Routing investments from mature, slow growth businesses into newer and faster growing businesses. And so one tool you can use for this is the BCG matrix, which is the Boston Consulting Group. And it looks at the different products, brands, businesses within a firm's or an organization, and helps managers to decide what to keep, what to not keep, what to invest in. And so we have 4 areas. So first is what we're looking at with the BCG matrix is market share. So for example, if 100 people bought a specific type of product or service, what percentage of them would buy our product or service? So if we have a high market share, that means people tend to buy our brand, and if we have a low market share, it means they tend to buy a different brand. And then we're looking at, is this area growing? Is there low growth or is there high growth? So you've probably heard the term cash cow. And what a cash cow is it's a product that, or a brand that has relatively high market share, and it's really stable, but it's not necessarily growing. And so our strategy here is to milk it. So we don't really invest any new money. We just kind of keep doing what we're doing. A star is one that we have a high market share and it's growing. And so what we want to do is we want to invest to keep growing it until it becomes a cash cow. A question mark is just that. It's an area that is growing, but we don't have a lot of market share. And so we need to determine whether we should invest in it to turn it into a star, or whether we're just going to stop investing and it'll become a dog and we'll get rid of it. And then a dog down here is an area where we have low market share and it's not growing. It's low, unstable, cash flows are neutral or negative, and what we want to do is divest that. So we can harvest it, meaning we'll keep it because there's enough people who still buy it, but it's very small demand. We're not making a ton of money on it, but usually we divest it, we get rid of it, maybe we sell it off, maybe we just stop making that product or service. And so here's an example of a BCG matrix of Samsung. So Samsung's cash cows are their appliances. Their stars are their technology, so their computers, their phones, their tablets, etc. So they're going to keep doing what they're doing with their appliances. They're going to invest in their consumer electronics. Their printers are question marks. They either need to invest in them to try to turn them into a star or just be done making printers. And then their watches are not popular. They're smartwatches, and so they would probably decide not to continue to make them. We can also look at grand strategies. These are a corporate's, they're broad corporate level strategic. It's a broad corporate level strategic plan used to achieve strategic goals and helps to guide strategic choices. So we can have a growth strategy, which focuses on increasing profits, revenues, and this is done through mergers and acquisitions, expanding our business, creating new businesses. And in this situation, we can take a stability focus where we focus on improving our current sales. We're just trying to get our company stable. A retrenchment where maybe we get rid of some of our brands and focus on turning our company around. And then a recovery, which happens after a retrenchment where we start to grow again. We can also look at what's happening in an industry, and we can do this by, we're answering the question here, how should we compete in the industry? And this is by looking at Porter's 5 forces. So Porter's 5 forces looks at 5 areas. It looks at how much competition, competitive rivalry is in an industry, how many different substitutes, products, or services there are, not competition, but alternatives to what we're offering, how likely it is, what is the threat of new entrants, what is the bargaining power of suppliers, so are there a lot of suppliers that can provide our component parts? And if there are, then they don't have a lot of bargaining power, but if there aren't, then they have more bargaining power. And then the bargaining power of buyers. So if there is a lot of competition and a lot of substitutes, then consumers have more bargaining power. But if there isn't a lot of competition and there aren't a lot of substitutes, then consumers don't have as much bargaining power. And there is a video on Canvas that better describes this and describes it more in depth. We also can look at positioning strategies. And this is just how we position ourselves. So one way is through cost leadership, and this is by producing a product or service of acceptable quality at a consistently lower price. Differentiation is providing a product or service that's sufficiently different from competitors that customers are willing to pay more for. And then a focus strategy is when we use cost leadership or differentiation to provide a really unique product or service to a very specific target market. Sometimes we call that a niche market. And so here's some examples of this. And so a cost leadership strategy is Walmart. They're looking at a large target market and they're competing on cost. Similarly, Nordstrom's uses differentiation, where they offer more designer merchandise and exceptional service than other department stores, but to a broad general market. In a more narrow market, Dollar General competes on cost, but they are in much smaller, they're in small towns. They have a much more niche and smaller market, so it's more narrow target. And then Anthropologie is a retailer that focuses on really differentiated products and services, and they have a very specific niche market there as well. We can also look at adaptive strategies, and the purpose is to choose an industry-level strategy that's best suited to changes in an organization's external environment. So we have defenders, prospectors, analyzers, and reactors. So a defender is aimed at defending their current strategic position. They have steady growth, offering a limited range of high-quality products, such as a company like Rolls-Royce. Prospectors are trying to seek fast growth. They're looking for new markets. They're more risk-taking, new innovative products, so a company like Apple. Analyzers are using an adaptive strategy. Here they're limiting, they might even copy others. So they're minimizing risk and maximizing profits by imitating the success of others. So Samsung imitates Apple. And reactors are companies that aren't really doing anything to address the external environment, and they usually are not very successful. So companies like Nokia. All right, we can also look at a firm level strategy, and this looks at how should we compete against a particular firm. And this exhibit just kind of shows you how they overlap and helps you to make decisions on how to compete. You can pause here and look at this more. And then we have to decide what type of strategic move we're going to make. Are we going to attack? Are we going to take a competitive move designed to reduce market share or profits? Or are we just going to be more responsive, where we're matching or mirroring our competitors and responding as we go? And so chapter 6, has a lot of content and a lot of information. There's a lot of other resources posted on Canvas, but I hope this mini lecture gave you a little bit more clarity on some of the concepts. If you have questions, please contact me. Thanks.